Hey guys, we're here today to talk about fresh herbs. Herbs are the aromatic leaves of various plants. We use 5 herbs here at Varasano's. The first is parsley. Next we use fresh basil. Basil is probably the most common herb that's put on pizza, made famous by the margarita pizza. Next we have thyme, rosemary, and oregano. Now the key to herbs really is freshness. You don't want to buy the herbs that far in advance. You don't want to have more than 3 or 4 days worth of herbs in the house because like any fresh cut plant, they just don't last that long. The exception to that might be rosemary. Rosemary probably can go more like a week. Now, again, the ideal for any plant would be, these herbs included, would be to make a nice fresh cut and put them in water, just like you would a fresh cut flower, where you'd cut the bottom of the stems, put them in water, keep the leaves above the water. The leaves will turn yellow if they're in the water. And store them this way. They'll actually store a few days. This is already over a day old, and you can see it looks pretty nice. Unfortunately, as a practical matter, it's very time-consuming and difficult to actually unpack all the herbs when we buy them and put them in water. Plus, some of them, they're cut so short, the stems are cut so short, that we really couldn't get them in the water without dunking half of the plant in it, and they just turn bad. So we only really do a fresh cut on the day of service, and we only really do it for the parsley and the basil. So let me just show you real quick. Very simple, just like you would if you bought your mom flowers. You have a nice cut at an angle. You put it right in the water. Then you just pick the leaves right off it, and they go right on the pizza. So this will sit right on the line, and when you need parsley or basil, you just rip a leaf off, and you rip it, and you put it right on the pizza. This way, the aromatics are coming out fresh right at the moment it's going on the pie. You can't really chop these in advance. We've tried that before, and it doesn't work because the aromatics only last a few minutes. They just evaporate right out. This sample was cut really no more than 20 minutes ago, and honestly, it just smells like cut grass. It smells like any plant. So all the things that made it parsley, all the aromatics are gone. So you can't really chop these in advance, unfortunately. Next, I want to talk about the other 3. With these, we can't store them in water, but we still want to take the leaves off the stems before service. Otherwise, it'll just take forever because it's a little bit of a slow process to destem these. The slowest of all is the thyme. It's really quite difficult to get these tiny leaves off this stem, but it does add a lot of flavor to our pizzas, so we take the time and we do it. The older the leaves, the woodier the stem. The stems get really woody and stiff, and then it's actually relatively easy to take the leaves off. I just hold at the top, and I pinch, and I just pull down, and all of the leaves will come off. The very tip, the top tip, you can't really do that with. You have to sort of pluck the leaves off. So this is time-consuming. We've experimented with lots of ways of taking the leaves off thyme. I wish I knew a shortcut. Unfortunately, there really isn't. One thing you can note is that the very, very tip sometimes can be so soft that it's edible, and you just have to use your judgment. If the tip is very, very soft, it's edible. So instead of picking off every little leaf, you can just sort of pluck off the end that has a couple of leaves and a little bit of stem, and that can just go right on a pizza because it's just as edible as the leaves are, so that's fine. Again, you don't want to bruise or damage the leaves at this point. Any bruising or damaging of the leaves should happen right before they go on to the pizzas. In fact, this will just get stored in a 9-pan, and right at Expo, these oregano leaves we put right on a Nucci pizza, for example. You just pick up a bunch and you just rip them, and that increases the amount of aroma that's exiting them, and then you just sprinkle them right on a pizza, and it's perfect. It's very flavorful. Next up, I want to mention that we do use some dried herbs in the house also, and by far the most important of these is oregano. I'm sort of an oregano fanatic. I've sampled pretty much every commercially available oregano in the world, about 49 different varieties. And what we've done is we've actually taken our favorite sample of that, and we're having it grown right here in the North Georgia mountains, and then we dry it ourselves. We've actually experimented with over a dozen different drying methods to get it so that it can be dried while keeping all of its color and all of its flavor intact. And you can see how much greener our sample is versus a commercially available one. And even this is actually pretty decent for a commercially available sample, but it doesn't even come close or compare to ours. And as different as the color is, the aroma is even more so. So if I take this and I break the leaves under my nose, this just smells wonderful. This one smells good, but it's not really close to ours. The last thing I want to mention about herbs is I want to mention this one little issue that we have with cilantro. We don't use any cilantro at Varasano's. However, occasionally a supplier will ship us cilantro and label it parsley. They look very, very similar. It's a very common mistake to make. You can see here in this photo that I'm showing, you can see the difference between the oregano leaf and the cilantro leaf. They look similar except that the cilantro has lots of little ridges around the edge, and you really want to be careful about this because if you get cilantro and you put it on a pizza by mistake, it will taste totally differently. It will mess up all of our recipes. And actually, there are some people that have a gene that makes cilantro taste particularly offensive. I actually have this gene, and cilantro to me tastes like Clorox or soap or some sort of cleaning fluid. And so anything with cilantro in it, you know, just it's not for our products.